One thing that made OnePlus the company it is today is the fact that OnePlus started selling incredible hardware at such a low price. Back when the OnePlus One came out, it had flagship specs for half the price of what Apple and Samsung was offering. Now fast forward to 2021, OnePlus is pretty much on par with the likes of Apple and Samsung and selling their flagship devices for over $1,000. But OnePlus wants to somewhat take a step back and offer a smartphone that costs less than $250. And this is the OnePlus Nord N200 5G. The N200 is a $240 smartphone that offers 5G connectivity, a 90Hz display, and a huge 5000 mAh battery. Now, I've had the phone for a few weeks now, and honestly, it's a decent phone for its price. I'm not gonna lie, there are some things that annoyed me the more I used the phone, but we'll get to that later on. So let's talk about the things that I like about the phone. The first thing would have to be its battery life. The 5000 mAh battery is plenty for your average person. If you're spending less than $250 on a smartphone, you're most likely not going to be on your phone 24/7. So with this huge battery, you're probably going to average around 2 days of usage, maybe 2.5 if you're a light user. The phone does have fast charging up to 18 watts with the included charger in a box, so battery life is superb, the charging is superb, and you're not going to have to worry about charging this phone every single night. The second thing is the 90Hz display. Okay, this is kind of 50-50 for me because it's an LCD panel, which means colors aren't as accurate and the phone's got pretty bad viewing angles, but besides that, the screen gets pretty bright and the 90Hz option is really nice to see at this price point, something we don't have on Google's $350 Pixel 4a. Now the overall display though looks pretty clean with a hole punch display on the upper left, and it's a flat display, which I love. But towards the bottom of the screen, there's a noticeable chin, which isn't a big deal, but would have been nice to have a more symmetrical display. Lastly, the intangibles. For a $240 smartphone, it has a headphone jack, a fingerprint scanner on the side that doubles as the power button, a micro SD slot to bump up the tiny 64 gigs internal storage, and the build quality isn't terrible. Yes, it's not made out of metal and glass, but the plastic back with the matte finish feels and looks really premium. The phone doesn't creak like most budget phones I've tested, so overall it feels like a phone that should cost more than $240, which I'm a fan of, and definitely something you'll enjoy holding. Now, the bottom firing speaker on the N200 isn't terrible either, which I'm actually quite surprised by. It gets really loud with little to no distortion, and while it would have been nice to have stereo speakers to get some stereo separation, the single speaker is definitely passable and I can watch videos and listen to songs comfortably. Alright, so let's move on to the things that I didn't enjoy as much on the N200. The first one is pretty annoying, and it's the vibration motors inside this phone. It literally feels like OnePlus used a motor from an Android phone from 2010, and it's really annoying every time I use the swipe gestures or type on the keyboard. It's just really loud, and it's a terrible experience. Just listen to this. Next up are the cameras. Technically, there are 3 cameras on this phone, but the only real usable one is the main 16 megapixel shooter. The other 2 lenses are 2 megapixel sensors for the macro and monochrome sensor, which to be honest, you're not really going to use, but the photos out of the N200 are just okay. It's what you'd expect from a smartphone that's less than $250. The photos are somewhat noisy or smudgy at times. HDR doesn't look great, which means photos still tend to blow out the highlights. And last but not least, it's slightly over sharpened or over processed for my liking. Now you have to understand that this isn't a phone that will replace your point and shoot or mirrorless camera. It's fine for snapping photos here and there, but you're not gonna wow anyone with its photo quality. But it's also not a potato. Alright, so with the name N200 5G, this also means that the phone has 5G support, right? Unfortunately, the 5G only works on T-Mobile, so if you have Verizon or AT&T, you're just going to be on LTE since it doesn't have enough 5G bands that's on AT&T and Verizon's network, which is still okay. But in a few years where 5G is the norm and you don't have T-Mobile, you'll miss out on faster data speeds, but for now, it's totally fine to be on LTE. Lastly, the performance on this phone is disappointing to say the least. Maybe I'm just spoiled by using their flagship 9 Pro with the Snapdragon 888 processor, but the Snapdragon 480 that's on this phone is pretty terrible. It stutters quite often when switching between apps or just doing everyday normal things. I actually noticed it the most if I'm browsing the web with a ton of images or constantly switching apps or going through menus. Even on the Google Play Store, the phone would sometimes freeze or not respond to any of the swipes or taps, which can be pretty annoying. But this isn't marketed towards me. It's for someone who just needs an affordable smartphone that they can use every single day that doesn't care about having the fastest or flashiest phone. But yeah, that's the OnePlus Nord N200 5G. For $240, you're getting a solid device with some compromises in a camera and performance department. Now, if you're a patient person and don't really care too much about photo quality, this might be a great pickup for you. Now, as usual, all the links will be in the description below if you do want to check it out. If you haven't seen my OnePlus 9 or OnePlus 9 Pro video, make sure to check that out as well. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next one.